Hello, Sarah and I are back again. This time we thought it'd be helpful to talk through some of the questions that we often get asked, not always by clients, but just by family members, people who phone us up with legal issues, just general things that people don't always know the answers to, which might be of interest to anybody listening or watching this. So, Sarah, do you want to start with one of them?
Yes. So the first one is, if you are not married, but you live with somebody, are they your common law spouse? So that's something that we hear a lot.
I think the media perpetuate that.
Yes.
Don't they? The common law spouse.
I think I hear it more in a social setting.
Yeah.
And it's something that I sort of jump on with friends when they say, oh, we're common law husband and wife. And that's when I sort of put my lawyer hat on and go, no, you're not. So there is no such thing as common law husband or common law wife. It is just something that's built up over the years, anecdotally in society, where people, I think, probably morally feel that they live as husband and wife, they've made that practical contribution, they've had children together, they might own property together, and therefore they're as good as married. So that somehow comes with some legal rights, and it's a huge issue which we won't get into as to whether it should come with some legal rights, but the answer to the question is no, it doesn't come with any legal rights. And unless you actually get married and have that legal ceremony
or a civil partnership,
and have that, sign that piece of paper, then no, you do not acquire any legal rights as a husband, wife, civil partner.
But I think that still comes as a shock when we have clients that come in and say, but we've been together for a long time, or we've got children.
And it can be a really unfair situation, particularly if a couple have been together for 20 or 30 years, they might have had children. I saw a lady a long time ago where they had been together for 25 years. They had 2 grown-up children who had been through university and out the other side, but they weren't married, and the house was owned in the man's sole name, and she had very little claim to anything. No claim on his pension, no claim on his income, and I think those 2 areas, people generally seem to be more educated in terms of property rights, because it's a quite clear, I'm not on this house is not owned in our joint names, therefore I probably don't have any claim to it.
Although I don't know, I think some people still don't understand that doesn't mean that they haven't got rights.
But I think what people don't take into account is the potential claim against income and pensions. That those are huge resources that are available to a family,
particularly if one of them has relied on the other one having that income.
If you've had that stereotypical setup where the woman may have given up her career to look after the children, or then gone back part-time or to a lower paid role, whereas the man has continued his career throughout the relationship, they've never married, they break up, the children are adults by this time, she's not got any claim for his pension or income.
Yeah. And I find it really difficult when you have to deliver that news to somebody.
Absolutely. But I think it's a question of education, and I don't know how that gets out there to people, but it's surely got to be, getting married or not getting married is a crucial decision in a person's relationship. And I think it works both ways. When you deliver to a married person that because they are married and they didn't have a prenuptial agreement and they're getting divorced, therefore their soon-to-be ex-spouse is going to get a share of your pension, that's often a very shocking piece of news. And I think there has to be work to be done there for people who are getting married to educate them about the legal implications of getting married.
I think so. And particularly where prenups are something that people are considering more now.
Well, they're just becoming much more
acceptable, aren't they?
Yeah, they're becoming more binding. We're not in a situation where if you've got a prenup, then that's it.
So that leads on to another question that we were asked, which is, are prenuptial agreements just for the rich, and are they binding?
Well, no is the answer on both fronts, but it's not quite as black and white. So certainly they're not just for the rich. They're for anybody that wants to have some degree of clarity. I was going to say certainty, but I'm not sure that's the right word.
No.
Clarity about their what the situation might look like if they get divorced.
Particularly, I mean, I think what we see a lot, or what I certainly see, is where it can come from the parents. So it's not necessarily the people who are getting married, but it's their parents. It's when there's family wealth that they've either got some of that wealth now or they're going to inherit it in the future.
I think that's a really important point. And it's not just inheritance in the traditional sense of the word, but also people are becoming much more savvy about inheritance tax planning and making gifts to children during their lifetime. And I think that's much more common, is that couples are aware that money might be coming to them from parents at periods of time during the marriage. And it might be that that's all the prenup does, is says that the house will be ours, whatever we accrue together will be ours, but if my mum and dad give us £200,000 in 3 years' time, that's mine and it's going to stay separate. And there's a logic to that.
There is. And I think it's easier, isn't it, for the grandparents, or sorry, not the grandparents, they're not necessarily grandparents, but the parents to start those initial conversations.
Yes.
Because I think we generally, as in this country, we're not very good at having those open dialogues.
No, and it must be awful. Like, oh, great, we're going to get married. What a wonderful time.
Yeah, I'm choosing my wedding dress and what we want to eat and the cake, but also I want you to sign this document because I don't want you to have anything that belongs to me. Yeah, it is tricky. It
is an uncomfortable situation, but it's...
Yeah. But there are statistics that say that if you have those conversations early on, it's more likely that you will have a long and happy marriage because everyone's been open.
Everyone's open about it, yeah. I think
it's like an insurance policy, isn't it? That's what I say to clients. You pay for your insurance monthly. Unfortunately, with a prenup, you've got to pay all at once. But it's the best insurance policy you can have. It's not binding.
But also it can be reviewed as well.
Yeah.
It's something that, and I always say to clients, it is an agreement. Inevitably, there is always one party that is driving it and the other party who probably couldn't care either way whether it's signed. But it is an agreement and it is something that needs to be kept under review as circumstances change. So it's absolutely worth considering if there are circumstances where family wealth is going to come into it, or property might have been purchased by parents pre-marriage. And I think that often makes it easier for the couple.
Yeah,
you can say, it's not me,
it's my dad or my mum, or my parents. But it is a tricky one. But we have different ways that we can deal with that, whether it's all sitting around a table together to try and make it so that it's not the lawyers that are dealing with it, that we can keep but that's, I mean, we can talk about that in more detail on another occasion. Yeah. So swiftly moving on, I think we get asked, or it certainly comes up quite a lot, about one parent being able to take the child abroad and people not knowing that that's not actually something that they can do. They can't take the child out of the jurisdiction of England and Wales.
Yeah, I don't think people realise that
unless
at all.
They have the other person's consent, preferably written, or an order of the court. And I think a lot of people don't realise it's actually a criminal offence because it's classed as child abduction. And I think most of the time, if most of the time it isn't an issue, but obviously if there's animosity on either side, then...
I just think it's something that... So if I took my children away, for example, in the summer on my own, technically I should have had a letter from my husband to say, yes, that's okay, you can go. But because we're married and you think, well, that's not an issue. But actually it still is an issue. Yeah. And then people become aware of it as part of the separation and they do a lot of Googling and Mumsnet and stuff like that. And then, unfortunately, it can sometimes become a weapon where parent who isn't taking the children away can say, well, unless X, Y and Z happens, I'll be withdrawing my consent to them going abroad with you. So, and it's inevitably is always the clients come to us and say, I'm going on holiday next week and this issue has arisen. Yeah. And obviously you're not going to get it resolved in that time through a court application. So it's...
I think it's just about educating people because these things can affect so many people.
Yeah, and crucially,
most people have children.
It affects the children. That's the thing. People lose sight of who is actually going to suffer in this situation. And yes, child abduction laws are there to keep children safe, but they're not there to allow
prevent them going on holiday.
Ex-parent to stop them going to Spain for 2 weeks.
Yeah. And moving on to another question that we get asked about the children is the one about grandparents and whether they can make an application. So in a situation where the parties have separated and the children are living with one parent and the parents of the other party want to see the children but haven't been seeing the children because of the breakdown of the relationship.
Yeah.
What can they do about that?
They can make an application to the court. I mean, obviously, we would always encourage them to suggest mediation in the first instance and to try and approach it without needing to make an application. But ultimately, they can make an application. They have an extra layer to go through that a parent with parental responsibility wouldn't have. So they need to have the permission of the court to make the application. But they can make that application in the same way that a parent can. And I think it's becoming more common because grandparents are relied upon much more these days than they were maybe 20 or 30 years ago for day-to-day childcare. And as a result of that, they spend more time with their children their grandchildren on a regular basis. It's not, we're not back in the olden days where you'd go and see granny and granddad maybe once every couple of months. Yeah. As working mothers, we rely on grandparents to do school runs and school holiday cover.
Yeah, I think that's true. They have a very different relationship.
And they do, which is wonderful. Yeah. I would say that our children's generation are likely to have a closer and stronger relationship with their grandparents than we did, or certainly than our parents did with their grandparents. Yeah. But as a consequence of that, then, when the relationship between the parents breaks down, the grandparents can be the sort of unintended sort of wounded out of the situation because they're suddenly cut out of the equation, and a very important relationship can be damaged.
Yeah. And I'm now moving on to divorce. So is adultery a reason for divorce?
No.
And
that it is a reason for divorce. It's a very common reason for divorce.
It's not one that you can cite anymore because you used to have to give a reason, and the fact.
Yes.
And the two facts that I think our hearts always sank when a client wanted to rely on them were adultery and unreasonable behaviour. Because the horrible thing about unreasonable behaviour was you had to list examples of the other person's unreasonable behaviour, which generally then inflamed the whole situation.
Absolutely, it did. Yeah.
But it was very subjective.
But unfortunately, it was necessary in lots of cases because the only alternative was that they waited until they were separated for 2 years, and you're forcing that couple to live in limbo and put their divorce proceedings off for 2 years. Unfortunately, some people did have to resort to that.
I always used to say to clients, whether you're happily married or not, you could still come up with enough examples of unreasonable behaviour for a divorce petition.
Pages on my husband.
Because it was so subjective.
Yeah, absolutely. I had one once where it was that she was buying Tesco own brand baked beans when he had specifically requested Heinz.
I get that,
and she wasn't respecting his wishes. So
there is a big difference.
But no, it's absolutely is a positive step to have brought in no fault divorce in 2022. Although I have had some clients who are disappointed where they feel that they are the wronged party, and they still want to then say, she has committed adultery, therefore I want that written down somewhere that I haven't done anything wrong, I didn't want this divorce.
I think that's more from an emotional side of it, and that needs some therapeutic help.
Absolutely.
It doesn't actually, because all that would happen was it inflamed the situation, which generally increased their legal costs and just made everything more difficult.
But I think, again, it comes back to that education point in that clients felt and do still feel that if they are not the person to blame for the breakdown of the marriage, that they should somehow have a better result, whether that's financially or in terms of the arrangements for the children, because they didn't do anything wrong. And that's another difficult conversation to have with clients, where you have to say to them, unfortunately, she may have had an affair, or she may have done X, Y, and Z, or he may have done this, but a court dealing with your finances aren't going to be interested in that.
They're going to be much more practical because they've got to work out how you're both going to live somewhere, and more importantly, where the children are going to live.
Absolutely.
And how long do you have to be married for before you can have a divorce, start divorce proceedings?
You have to be married for a year. And I have had a case
I have as well.
before where I think they were together, they were married. They were together probably for a couple of years before they got married. Then they got married, very quickly realised that it was a mistake. And she came to see me, I think, a month or 2 months in. And I said to her, "There's not a lot I can do for you."
Yeah.
And we did. We kind of front loaded it. We had it ready to go. The happy anniversary. It's the divorce papers. But no, you cannot get divorced unless you've been married for a year.
And another thing we're seeing happening, sort of not linked to the prenups, but it's a similar situation where they're not married, they're not getting married, but the parents, they're buying a house together, and the parents, in this day and age, it's pretty difficult to buy a house. Everything's very expensive. The parents are saying, right, well, we'll give you X amount,
deposit or whatever,
so you can buy the property. And people aren't always thinking about how to protect that. So we see the tail end of that, where the relationship's breaking down, and they're saying, well, my mum and dad gave us £100,000.
Yeah. So in those situations, if it's an unmarried couple, they should have a declaration of trust at the time that they purchase the property, so that there's absolute clarity over the structure of the ownership, whether that's she's going to own X percent, he's going to own Y percent, or that the deposit is ring fenced and everything else is 50-50. It can be bespoke, but the important thing is that it exists and that it's properly drafted, legal advice on both sides, and everybody's aware of it and kept a copy of it. We would also, in that situation, probably suggest a cohabitation agreement that can deal with things like contents of the house, joint bank accounts and things like that. Those two documents are going to be the best protection that an unmarried couple will have, because when we deal with it at the other end, helping an unmarried couple who are separating, it's so much more complicated than it is for a married couple. And it can be so much more fact specific, and you do need that evidence, which you don't necessarily need for a married couple, because you're coming at it from a different perspective in terms of you're married, so you're sort of thrown your lot in together, and it doesn't matter if the house is owned in his sole name because you're married. That isn't the case for unmarried couples. And inevitably, when a relationship breaks down and people have strong feelings against each other, they start to remember things in different ways. And so when woman says, well, my parents gave us £10,000 for the deposit, which was always intended to be ring fenced for me, man may suddenly say, well, no, I don't remember that. Or yes, they did give us the 10,000, but
it was a gift.
I remember that we all went out for dinner and your dad was very clear that that was for both of us. And it's people's memories fade over time.
But the other thing is that all that unpicking of memories and arguing about who said what costs a lot of money.
Oh yeah, it can be incredibly expensive. And I think, whereas if you've done that work, and people are often reluctant, they're going through a conveyancing process.
They don't want to pay more money.
They're setting aside money for new furniture and stamp duty and whatever. So then for a conveyancing solicitor or a family solicitor to say to them, you need to pay an extra few thousand for a declaration of trust and a cohabitation agreement, they're all happy and excited and thinking, oh, we don't need that, we don't need that. They absolutely.
But again, it comes down to it's an insurance policy.
And it's an education.
You're front loading it, but it's
But again, it's the education point of saying to them, if you don't do this, and if it isn't clear now, if it goes wrong in the future, this is potentially what's going to happen,
and this is how much.
And this is potentially how much it's going to cost you. Absolutely.
Yeah. And going back to the divorce, I should have talked about this when we were still talking about divorce, but I forgot about the acting for the husband and wife, because that we do get phone calls, or we have historically, where people phone up and say, can you act for both my husband and I, or my wife and I, because actually we're getting divorced, but we've agreed everything
and we're amicable.
And we don't want solicitors involved, undoing all of that. And for a long time we had to say, of course not, because there's a conflict. But we can now.
We can, through the one couple, one lawyer process that we offer. And again, it's another example of the family law profession moving with the times and listening to what clients need, because you don't always have people that are at each other's throats when they separate. Often, I mean, we don't get to see them that often,
no.
But often couples are able to come to an agreement amicably together, or they might attend mediation and they're able to come to an agreement that way, but they still need a lawyer to do the paperwork and make sure that it's properly done. And so we can now offer that service where we act for both parties to do that paperwork process for them, and to give them advice to an extent to make sure that they're getting what they need. And again, and that's just one of the options that we offer as a team. And I think that's it's important to make that point, that it isn't just a case of if you go to a lawyer, you're kind of putting a marker down that this is it and
we're going to start fighting.
Yeah, we're going to war.
Yeah.
It isn't just that. So we can offer mediation, collaborative law, one couple, one lawyer, dealing with matters amicably with other lawyers. So we've got great relationships with our peers locally, and we do genuinely want to help clients and work together. So it isn't always a case of going to a lawyer
I think it's far more rewarding, isn't it? If we can, resolve things without having to go to court, without a battle, we get more job satisfaction because you've helped them.
Yeah, and you've done what the client. When clients come to a lawyer, they're not coming to a lawyer because they want to part with tens of thousands of pounds and spend months and months and months arguing with their ex-spouse. They're coming to you to say, please help me get this resolved as quickly as possible and as cost effectively as possible, and hopefully get me out of the other side in one piece. So if we can do that,
and I think as a team, that's something we all have that mindset. We're all resolution members as well.
And even more so when they've got children. And that's what I often say to clients is, your ex-spouse is not going away. No. You've got two children together. Yeah.
You've got christenings, school events, graduations, weddings, all of that to come.
And you've got to keep that in mind throughout the process, because if you're getting down to arguing over the last £5,000 or £10,000, you've got to remember that at some point, hopefully, you're going to be sitting together at the top table while your daughter gets married, and hopefully able to do that, and not we don't want to wreck your life. And I think that's important to keep in mind. The cost of it, the emotional impact of it, the impact on their children are all factors. It's not just about getting them the most money out of the situation. And that is what sets us apart, I think. I think we all keep that in mind constantly.
Yeah. Okay, so hopefully bringing that to a close, it's given everybody a bit more information, and we'll be back again next time.